Remember globalization, that whole interconnected world thing? Turns out, it's not just about cheaper sneakers and finding a decent taco anywhere on Earth. It's also about how religion, politics, science, and even pharmaceuticals all get mashed up in a giant, messy stew that determines who rules the global roost. Think of it like a game of Risk, but instead of little plastic armies, you've got countries throwing around their economic weight, technological prowess, and yes, even their religious clout. And like any good game of Risk, there's always someone gunning for world domination looking at you. Guys in the basement wearing bathrobes. But here's the kicker. It's not just about who has the biggest guns anymore, it's about who can hack those guns, who controls the rare earth minerals inside them, and who can convince the rest of the world that their brand of global domination is the tastiest flavor. In other words, it's complicated, so buckle up, Buttercup, because we're diving headfirst into the wacky world of global power dynamics. We'll be analyzing military budgets, dissecting nuclear arsenals, and exposing corruption scandals, all while trying to figure out who's holding the winning hand in this high-stakes game of global poker. And, hopefully by the end of it, we'll all have a better understanding of just how interconnected, unpredictable, and frankly terrifying the 21st century really is. Let's talk cash, baby. Specifically, the kind of cash that gets poured into fighter jets, tanks, and enough ammunition to make Rambo blush. Because in the world of global power, nothing says I'm the boss quite like a ridiculously large military budget. At the top of the food chain, we've got the good old US of A still clinging to its title as global superpower like a toddler to a well-worn teddy bear. They dropped a cool $831 billion on their military in 2024. That's more than the next 10 countries combined. Now, some might argue that's a tad excessive. But hey, when you're busy policing the world, spreading democracy, or at least your version of it, and occasionally liberating some oil fields, it pays to have the best equipped military money can buy. But don't let Uncle Sam's swagger fool you. There's a new kid on the block and they're packing some serious yuan. Yep, we're talking about China, the economic powerhouse that's been quietly building up its military at a pace that's got Pentagon officials sweating like a panda in a sauna. China, China, China. It's the elephant in the room, the 800-pound gorilla on the swing set. You get the picture. Point is, they're kind of a big deal right now. And when it comes to global power, they're playing the long game. Their goal? National rejuvenation by 2049. Basically, they want to be top dog, head honcho, the big cheese of the 21st century. And they're not just talking about economic dominance. They're talking about reshaping the entire international order in their image. Their military modernization program is like a Chinese buffet for defense contractors, all-you-can-eat contracts as far as the eye can see. They're developing everything from hypersonic missiles to aircraft carriers, all while beefing up their cyber warfare capabilities and space program. It's enough to make even the most jaded general weak in the knees, but it's not just about fancy new hardware. They're also investing heavily in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other cutting-edge technologies that could give them a decisive edge on the battlefield of the future. China's rise is a stark reminder that global power is not a zero-sum game. The rise of one power doesn't necessarily mean the decline of another, but it does mean that the balance of power is shifting and the established order is being challenged. Even with all that cash and fancy tech, China's military machine isn't without its flaws. Remember that old saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely? Well, it seems even a communist party isn't immune to a little good old-fashioned graft. Turns out, when you're handing out lucrative defense contracts like candy on Halloween, some folks are bound to get sticky fingers. We're talking about corruption, baby. The kind of shady dealings and backroom deals that make even the most cynical observer shake their head and mutter, "Come on, man." Just last year, China's former defense minister Li Shangfu was caught with his hand in the cookie jar, along with a dozen other high-ranking military officials. Apparently they were skimming funds, awarding contracts to cronies, and generally behaving badly. Who knew? Now, corruption in the military is nothing new. It's a tale as old as time, or at least as old as gunpowder. But it's a particularly thorny issue for China as they try to modernize their military and assert themselves on the world stage. After all, how can you expect to win wars and project power when your generals are more interested in lining their pockets than defending the motherland? It's a question that's got to be keeping Xi Jinping up at night, tossing and turning between silk sheets in his forbidden city bedroom. Section 5, Red Dawn 2.0. This time it's personal. Remember that classic 80s movie, Red Dawn? A bunch of plucky teenagers fighting off a Soviet invasion? Well, it seems like Hollywood might have been onto something, because these days the China-Russia bromance is giving NATO strategists night sweats. Forget the Cold War. This is the chilly vibe era, where two authoritarian regimes bond over their shared love of military parades and disdain for democracy. They're like the grumpy old men of the international community, sitting on their porch, shaking their fists at the world and muttering about those darn kids and their Western values. But this isn't just some harmless geopolitical grumbling. We're talking about joint military exercises, weapons sales and intelligence sharing, all designed to counter US influence around the globe. They're like the world's most awkward power couple, except instead of arguing over who left the toilet seat up, they're threatening to upend the global order. And then there's the whole nuclear issue. Russia's been caught red-handed, pun intended, supplying China with highly enriched uranium, the key ingredient in nuclear weapons. Now, they claim it's all for peaceful purposes, like powering Chinese toasters or something. But let's be real. We all know what happens when you mix enriched uranium with a healthy dose of geopolitical ambition. Section 6, nukes, because sometimes a strongly worded letter just isn't enough. Let's talk about the big one, shall we? Nuclear weapons, the ultimate trump card, the one thing that keeps world leaders from settling their differences the old-fashioned way. With a good old-fashioned brawl. China's been busy beefing up its nuclear arsenal like a bodybuilder on steroids. They're adding new silos faster than you can say mutually assured destruction. And their stockpile of warheads is growing at a rate that's got everyone, from arms control experts to your average doomsday prepper, reaching for the antacids. They're projected to have over 1,000 nukes by the end of the decade, enough to make even the most hardened Cold War warrior break out in a cold sweat. And they're not just sitting on their nuclear laurels either. They're developing new and improved delivery systems, like hypersonic missiles that can evade even the most sophisticated missile defense systems. Now, China insists that its nuclear policy is purely defensive. They claim they'd only ever use their nukes in retaliation for a nuclear attack. But when you're talking about weapons of mass destruction, intentions only go so far. The fact remains that China is rapidly becoming a nuclear superpower, and that's a game changer for global security. It means that the world is entering a new era of nuclear multipolarity, where the fate of humanity rests not just in the hands of the US and Russia, but also in the hands of a rising China. Section 7, hypersonic hype, when you absolutely positively have to vaporize something yesterday. Remember dial-up internet, waiting for what felt like an eternity for a web page to load? Well, that's how antiquated traditional missiles must seem to the Chinese military these days, because they've gone hypersonic. We're talking about missiles that travel at 5 times the speed of sound or faster. That's like going from New York to Los Angeles in the time it takes to order a pizza. Except instead of a pizza delivery guy, it's a high-tech weapon of mass destruction, and instead of a tip, you get obliterated. China's leading the pack in hypersonic technology, with an arsenal of missiles that can deliver a nuclear payload with pinpoint accuracy, bypassing even the most advanced missile defense systems. It's enough to give any defense planner heart palpitations. They've got the DF-17, a hypersonic glide vehicle that can maneuver at incredible speeds, making it nearly impossible to intercept. Then there's the DF-26, an intermediate-range ballistic missile that can target ships at sea, putting a serious dent in US naval dominance. And let's not forget about the YJ-21, a hypersonic anti-ship missile that can be launched from China's Type 055 destroyers, turning them into floating arsenals of doom. It's like a scene out of a Michael Bay movie, except this time it's real life, and the explosions have real-world consequences. Section 8, Future Shocks, fasten your seatbelts, it's about to get bumpy. So, what does the future hold for global power dynamics? Well, if the past few years are any indication, it's going to be a wild ride. The US might still be the reigning champ, But China's nipping at its heels, flexing its economic and military muscles like a bodybuilder at a beach party. And let's not forget about Russia, the unpredictable wild card that's always happy to stir the pot and throw a wrench in the works. But here's the thing, it's not just about these three heavy hitters anymore. The global power landscape is becoming increasingly fragmented and unpredictable. Emerging powers like India, Brazil, and Indonesia are stepping up their game, vying for a seat at the table. Technology is also playing a major role in shaping the future of power. From artificial intelligence to cyber warfare, the battlefields of tomorrow will be as much digital as they are physical. And with the rapid pace of technological advancement, it's anyone's guess who will come out on top. One thing's for sure, the 21st century is going to be a time of great upheaval and transformation. The old rules no longer apply, and the only constant is change. Section 9 and the award for global domination goes to, so who will ultimately emerge victorious in this global power struggle? Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. It's like trying to predict the winner of a horse race where the horses are constantly changing jockeys, switching lanes and occasionally morphing into cybernetic centaurs. The US might have the military might, but China's got the economic clout and the long-term vision. Russia's got the nukes and the unpredictability factor. And then there are all those other countries waiting in the wings, hoping to capitalize on any misstep by the big players. One thing's for certain, the future of global power is anything but certain. It's a complex, multifaceted, and constantly evolving game with no clear winners or losers. The only thing we know for sure is that it's going to be one hell of a show. So grab some popcorn, settle in, and try to enjoy the ride. It's going to be a bumpy one.